Hello. Today I'm going to start the second look series that I mentioned on the Jackrabbit Support Server. This is going to be an introduction into that series, where I'm going to cover a few of the basic elements and what to expect as the series progresses. I'm going to cover a lot of information overall. So most of the time, these videos will be different components merged together. So do not pay attention to the time, as some of these videos may end up taking several days to actually produce in order to be thoroughly complete with each and every module currently produced. Now, my current drive-by introduction process that I use for announcing the modules isn't going away. I use that approach because it helps to legitimately convey the act of discovery. That is, my goal is to provide enough information so that you can begin using the module. But then as you progress, you discover more and more intricacies that given module offers. A second look is taking a look at the module and addressing certain questions that have been asked or that have come up with that particular module within the Jackrabbit server. It is also going to cover many of the extra updates that have taken place since its first inception. Now, with the exception of the analyzer and the dollar cost averaging module, everything else applies to all modules consistently. And as I progress through this series, unless I explicitly mention the analyzer or the dollar cost averaging module, then they are, of course, the default exceptions. Now, with respect to each of the layers that are going to be involved, when I cover each module, I'm going to be focused on that module only. The only exception is to maybe bring in the analyzer to show how a given setup will produce results, or lack thereof. I'm not necessarily going to try to make every single module profitable, as for the purpose of the second look series, it is more about covering every single component within the module and how those modules interact to each other. So first, let's pull up a module, and I'm going to cover some generalities about that module. Now, I could start with moving averages, but I'm not. I'm going to pick Bollinger's. And that will become clear in a few minutes to why I picked the Bollinger's. I'm just waiting for it to load. And there has been some obscurities within TradingView lately where it may not load on the first run. Sometimes I've had to load an indicator twice just to get it to load once. But here it is, it's loaded. Click on it, click on the gear, go into styles, always turn off the signal line, and part of the update process that I just recently completed is to put these items at the top. Come over to inputs, turn on the chart. That is consistent with all of the modules, every last one of them. Again, with the exception of the analyzer and the dollar cost averaging module. Also, every module has an identifier now. where you can put notes and references for this particular module. Now I'm going to cover one very basic element all modules have. All modules have a primary setting and a confirmation setting. In essence, each module is two indicators. The reason I did this is confirmation is a well-known and well-practiced policy. It's something every trader sooner or later uses consistently. I could have just let you stack the same module on top of itself, and that works sufficiently well. But TradingView puts a premium on indicator layers. Or when you, simple terms, the number of modules you can link. The beginning subscription of Pro only allows one linkage. And where confirmation is such an important feature, that would be a waste of linkages not to have it in every single module directly. So, when you look at the modules, all of the framework will have its own confirmation, and now every single module, the confirmation operates independently of the primary. Now you can consider this the primary indicator, the confirmation indicator if you want. But for the purposes of my nomenclature, I'm just going to refer to primary and confirmation, just to keep things simple and separated. You do not need to use the confirmation. You can if you want, and it serves a legitimate purpose. Do not go out of your way to try to use it unless it has a legitimate need and meaning for what you are trying to achieve. The second component that is generalized were all of the modules that support moving averages is the framework supports 30 different moving averages. So for Bollingers, this is a moving average as well. So 30, 30, 30, and 30. So just within these four moving averages, you have 30 and 30 is 900. 900 and 900 is 81,000 combinations thereabout. No, wait a minute, it's 4 zeros. 810,000 combinations roughly, just with the moving averages. Now when you factor in your lookbacks and you factor in your source, it is reasonable to say that you have unlimited and infinite number of combinations. So when you ask me what is a good combination, I don't know. I can give you what I have found that works well. But when the modules have this many different possible combinations, I honestly don't know what will work. And that's before you can get, we even talk about time frame analysis. So basically here you can put in 1 to 1,440. So right within this one single entry, 1,440 different combinations. Now you add that, or you should say you multiply that by the 810,000 possible combinations of your moving averages, and you begin to see just how quickly this can become limitless in potential. This is just the primary. If you do that with the confirmation, then you've enhanced your abilities even more. So in all honesty, most of Jackrabbit is discovery. Even the numbers that get picked here. A lot of times I'll put standard numbers that everybody is used to. Other times I'll put weird numbers that I find that works well as a beginning point. There is no set perfect match that I know of. It doesn't exist. Realistically, once you get past the basic starting point, there is no limit to what just a single indicator is capable of. And then when you couple that with another indicator, and you stack the two together, you've just made it even more limitless. Okay, let's turn off the signal line, turn on the chart. Same thing with RSI. Now, rather than saying indicator on indicator constantly, you will often hear me reference and refer to the chain. The combination of indicators or modules creates a chain. This is the top of your chain. Right now, this is the bottom of the chain. And to link the chain, you put this to yes, and then you point this to the signal line. And now the chain will update so that the results for this entry, your final module, will be the combination of where this indicator and this indicator confirm overlapping results. In other words, only when both indicators show a buy or a sell will this actually register now as part of your chain. This is also the limit of the Pro subscription. One layer or one chain link. If you want to go to a more advanced layer, like what is most common. Most common for most people, next step is dollar cost averaging. Now, I'm not going to go through a lot of the setup here. That will come later for discussion. Okay, I want to attach it to the RSI line. And now we have two links to the chain. This is the head of the chain or the beginning. This is the final part of the chain or the tail. You always place your alerts against the tail of the chain. Right here. And of course, as you can see, why the Bollinger's RSI combination is so powerful and so resilient to the market. Buys, sells. Very profitable, very easy to do. But this situation requires the Pro Plus subscription. If I was to go with making each layer so that it did not contain the confirmation internally, that would literally double the number of links in your chain and be a legitimate waste of your subscription. So that is why all modules contain both a primary and a confirmation to help you get the best out of your subscription. So each module is, in essence, 2 indicators in one. You always use the primary. The confirmation is strictly when you need to, and there are legitimate reasons for using the confirmation. For example, let's set this up for a quick test. For that, I'm going to need the analyzer. Now, as you can see, things can get complicated quickly if you let it. Don't let it. Keep everything reasonably simple. So for the analyzer, I'm just going to hook it to the dollar cost averaging. I'm not going to tune it, except for one thing that I need to do in order for it to work right. Other than that, I'm just going to leave everything else alone and come over here. Now you see where it shows all of the information and the analysis. And you see it's not very profitable. Only makes 26 cents net profits. It does a lot of trades. It doesn't hold very long. But that's because I didn't tune anything. You have to tune your settings. And since everything relies on the strategy, let's do a very simple, easy to understand process. As you can see, it calculates and it develops and it changes. So as you're working with the modules, notice things didn't go very well. Also, I didn't tune this properly. Always make sure you set everything up. So as you can see, if anything is not properly tuned, it has an impact on your results. For better or for worse, that could go against your trading. So you want to be sure to make sure everything is properly set up. Take your time, and it will give you proper results. In this case, this strategy gives me $21 every 17 days. Not earth-shattering, not over the top, but it does very well with an 83% success rate. It's a reasonable and consistent profiting strategy. And at this rate, it's not very hard to see how you can actually take and go from $11 to $22 and double this profit, or $33 and triple the profit. So for a $33 position size, you're looking at $63 in 17 days. Not bad. But that is the point of these modules, to connect them together to give you a reasonable trading paradigm as you go through each and every module. The second look process will cover all of the minute details, including all 30 moving averages, and they all have a lot of distinctiveness. Now, if you delete a module and you don't unlink it, it will delete the entire chain. So if I click yes, all of these modules are going to go away. If I come down here and do the same thing, it takes out both of these modules. So as you work, pay attention to your modules. The other thing you want to do, it's not necessary, but if you're doing a work in progress, be sure you save your chart. You can delete it after you make your alerts, but you should nonetheless keep a working copy while you are developing them. Now, that brings us to keeping a journal. You need to keep a trader's journal. You need to keep a definitive and consistent listing of your settings, especially as your strategies and recipes begin to grow. You're not going to remember everything 6 months from now. And as you set up alerts, you're liable to be using several different strategies per alert. So don't neglect documenting everything in your journal. It is essential, especially if you don't have the premium subscription and every 2 months you have to redo your alerts. You need to know your settings. Don't take shortcuts. As you plan for each module, make sure you give yourself plenty of time. Make sure you understand each module as it works on its own. That may mean doing some reading, investigating websites like Investopedia, or just spending time actually tinkering with the module and seeing what you can accomplish on a chart. It's important to remember you want to buy low and sell high. You want to be careful of these kind of drops if you're not specifically using an averaging process. Focus on exactly the kind of trading you want to do. Think about that before you start actually setting up your module. You can set up a very specific surgical process that does extremely well, or you can set up an averaging process that will over time provide a reasonable average for your operations. Take into account all of the various combinations where you are working. Not just different modules, but different combinations within the modules. As I said, with many of these indicators, they are limitless in possibilities. Even something that may not have many options, like parabolic SAR, can still be quite limitless when you compare different components. So think about that process carefully. Now, very simple, very easy process. Nothing over the top. That is literally how you build your chain. Use consistency. It's not a matter of simply haphazard guessing. You need to focus on what you are trying to achieve. Whether you are trying to achieve a short or a long, or a fast or a slow strategy. It's not about how quickly you can produce your profit. And here is a good example of information that will help you. So let's enlarge this window. On the modules that request a ticker ID, you can actually use a different ticker than the one you are actually on. For example, I can buy ADA against Bitcoin. When looking for your sales, max sales and sales only apply if you're shorting. Buys and max buys apply if you're using a long position. Now this is where you can figure out your budget. Maximum buys within the last 5,000 candles is 7. Round this up to 10, double it. So if you have a budget of 20 positions, or roughly $232, that is a safe bet this coin will be productive and profitable, and you will stay within your budget consistently. So this technical information is here to help provide you a framework to figure out your budget. If you're using shorts, for example, 3 commas, FTX, KuCoin, then these apply the same way I did the longs. So now that we have the basis points there, we look at the strategy tester. 33 cents for 17 days. Now, again, remember, if you're not set up properly, your results are not going to be correct. Always use USD. If you're trading in USD, USDT, or USDC, always put your minimum budget position size and make sure this always matches this. Be sure to put in your proper exchange fees, because nothing's worse than having what you think is a winning strategy and then having it go south once you add the fees. Now, I always check mark these because Jackrabbit pulls data in real time. These help simulate that process to give you a more accurate situation. Now, overall, this is not very profitable. You need this to be above 50% minimum. Quite frankly, from my standpoint, once I figure fees in, generally speaking, if it's below 70%, I tune it until I get better results. So let's start by tuning it. Let's come down and look at our primary. Okay. Now I'm just going to take some wild guesses here. Nothing over the top. Not necessarily going to go out of my way to make a perfect situation, because realistically, perfect doesn't exist. This is just demonstrating how you can make changes and how those changes affect your balance real time. So I made some changes. I've got max buys, so forth. Looking at the chart, it looks like I'm buying low and selling high, which is something that I wanted to do. Now let's see what the strategy tester reports. Well, it's actually better. It made only 2 trades in 17 days, but it got both those trades profitable. That's fairly respectable. For a small position size, it's not profitable. But for the fact that it made a profit, that is a good sign. So there are that's just an example of how quickly things can change when you look at the process carefully. And I'm not really changing a lot at one time. And that is the important part. It's important that you understand how your changes affect your trading. So it's not necessarily a matter of those elements directly. But when you look at your charts, you'll see that this price action is above the sell action. This is going to be a loss. How much of a loss? And you can see that over here. You can see exactly when you take losses and profits. Don't neglect the details. This is only 40% profitable, while the market lets it do well for this market. Realistically, it's not very good. Again, very clear factors you need to focus on as you move forward with the framework. That is critical in your process. It takes time to find profitable situations. So let's move to call. Let's move this to SMA. Okay, we're getting a little better. So again, small changes. Don't go out of your way to make massive changes. And as you can see, while it looks good on the chart, it came up a loss here. And the percentage is lower. It's a simple process for your chains. Don't neglect the testing or the analysis, and don't try to rush. Now, just by playing around, if you will, and experimenting, you can get an idea of what works and what doesn't work. Not everything is going to work well. That is something to be aware of. Some things will work well. Some things won't. At this stage, when you're working, play with different numbers. Now I'm about to make a lot of people cringe, but most of this is meaningless. What I focus on, this is 17 days worth of information. So that means in 17 days, I'm going to make $10. That's not going to get me very far. Right now, the market is on my side. This is below 50%, which means overall, I will lose money. It takes 1,054 candles per a constant trade. Realistically, that is roughly a little less than 1 day. This needs to be higher. This needs to be higher. This is meaningless for my bottom line. If you know technical analysis and you know the intricacies of your profit factors, all fine and well. But for the average individual, ignore this. For the most part, ignore this as well. The only thing you really need to be concerned about here is you don't want it really going above your order size. The smaller this number, the better. The higher this number, the better. The smaller this number, the better. Again, keep everything simple. So, as we progress through the second look, take your time, watch the videos multiple times, and experiment. Remember, you're going to learn best by discovery. While I may cover every little nuance and every little possibility, remembering it is going to be a different story unless you go through the process of discovery through your own learning abilities. Until next time.